I'm Rob Licuria, Senior Editor at Gold Derby, here with Chris Brancato, co-creator and showrunner for the epic crime drama series Godfather of Harlem, which will premiere its third season this January. So, Chris, season 2 ended with these Harlem riots. Where is the show headed for season 3? Because I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, first of all, the show will be premiering on MGM Plus, which
Right.
is what Epix is changing to, on January 15th, 2023. So we ended the last season. Last season was about Bumpy trying to seize control of the French Connection from the Italians, making him a wholesaler at their level. And he managed to effectuate that collection of the dope, 3,000 kilos. But the Harlem riots started as a result of the death of a black kid at the hands of a policeman. And by dumb luck, the 3,000 kilos of dope burnt up in a warehouse while Bumpy was otherwise occupied with trying to save Malcolm from some hitmen who were associated with the Nation of Islam. So we begin season 3 days later with Bumpy deep in the hole. He owes the Italians money. He knows that things are going to be rough. Chin is in jail for an indeterminate length of time because his own daughter ratted him out in the last episode of last year. So a new Italian figure emerges, Joe Colombo, a guy who is going to mine Harlem for Chin and also try to cut a deal with Bumpy Johnson to help distribute the heroin. But Bumpy feels caged when he's working with the Italians. It hasn't worked out with him. He was partnered with Chin in season 2, and it just didn't work out. So he refuses Colombo's even generous deal, setting the stage for a season of conflict between Joe Colombo, a new boss, and Bumpy Johnson. And Bumpy realizes he needs an alliance, and he ends up partnering with a Spanish Harlem gangster named Jose Battle, real life character, who was involved in the numbers business, women, prostitution, etc. And he ends up allying with Bumpy, a black-brown alliance, because Jose Battle is Latin, Cuban. And he wants nothing more than to displace Castro from Cuba and retake Cuba. And so Bumpy associates with Battle, which puts him ultimately in the orbit of the CIA, with whom Battle is working to try to take down Castro. So what we have this season is the Cuban connection.
Yeah.
As all these worlds collide, a new Italian bad guy, Jose Battle representing Spanish Harlem, and Bumpy in Central Harlem trying to maintain a grip after losing the French Connection.
It's so exciting. I love it how you're injecting this new Cuban element from Spanish Harlem. And I must admit, Chris, my favorite, apart from Forest, which we will talk about him in a minute, the Italian stuff is what really gets me going as someone from Italian background who's obsessed with gangster films. I just love it. And I was hoping that Joe Colombo would make an appearance in the show. So there's so much to look forward to, right? But then it also makes me realize the show can be so successful because of the parallels that we inevitably draw between the civil rights movement, 1960s, and the current conversations that we are having in this political and social climate that we're living in. Does that really occur to you very much when you're writing and creating the show, that people are going to draw those parallels to the current day?
Always. And when I was approached with the idea of doing Bumpy Johnson in the 1960s, he had a very long criminal career. I had written a movie about Bumpy Johnson in the 1930s, played by Lawrence Fishburne. So I wasn't that interested in doing Bumpy Johnson fighting the Italians again. I felt like I had already done it, until I recalled that Bumpy Johnson and Malcolm X were friends. And I realized there could be a gangster show that was the collision of organized crime and civil rights. And that turns out to be a Rubik's Cube that's incredibly difficult to solve on an episode-to-episode basis, trying to combine two things that actually don't belong in the same sentence. That said, it was immediately apparent to us that by using the prism of the past, we could talk about things of contemporary relevance and create a kind of safe distance. so that almost every episode dwells on stuff that has contemporary resonance, but is kind of safe to watch because it's set way back when.
Yeah.
And what we also can see from the show is, on the one hand, things have changed greatly for African Americans. We've had an African American president. And on the other hand, things haven't changed much at all. And so that's what the show is trying to articulate. And in particular, Forest Whitaker playing Bumpy Johnson is a key to the whole show.
Yeah.
He's a brilliant actor. He's number one on the call sheet. He's a great force for good. Our set is a happy place. And I like to call the show the education of Bumpy Johnson. He's being slowly but surely affected by Malcolm. He understands that he's importing dope into his own community, and he justifies it by saying, well, somebody's going to do it. It'll be the white guys, the Italians. So I'm going to do it myself and help the community with the money. So it's a conundrum that Bumpy faces over the course of many seasons. And will he change? What's the effect of Malcolm and other factors, like the fact that he has a daughter who was a heroin addict?
Yeah, that's right. I can't imagine the show actually without Forest Whitaker. He's such a towering presence on this show. His performance, to me, and he's won every award under the sun for previous work, but this is some of the best stuff that he's ever done in his career. I've told him that to his face. He acknowledged that. So yeah, he brings so much to the show. I totally agree with you. There's something I want to talk to you about as well with this show that I talk about often with people who have worked on Godfather of Harlem and other shows about organized crime, and that is that I feel like it's aspirational fantasy for many of us, because we love seeing gangsters do really bad things and get away with it, because sometimes we feel like the real world and the criminal justice system, for example, doesn't quite get us there. What do you feel about gangster films and why we love them so much?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's fun to watch people do things that we wouldn't do ourselves.
Yeah.
And my writing in that genre, I have several shows in the crime genre, really comes from just being interested in watching them myself. I gravitate toward them. That said, you really need to have a fresh angle on it.
Yeah.
There's so many tropes. It's so easy with the Italians in particular to fall into just tropey stuff you've seen before. So we fight really hard to make sure. I mean, I can't tell you the discussions in the room of like, oh, how do we kill somebody this week in a way we didn't kill somebody last week? What's the fresh kill? So it's the bigger challenge is to try to thematically link the stories together so that the civil rights aspect that Malcolm, the stories he carries, end up dovetailing with the crime story in one fashion or another, either as a juxtaposition or to support what it is that Bumpy's doing to try to get himself out of a jam. And in this season, Malcolm takes a trip to Mecca in episode 3 and Africa in episode 4, this transformative journey that is his pathway to changing his political philosophy, becoming more inclusive of other civil rights groups, and also earning the hatred of the FBI and the NYPD and the CIA to the point where his life is in severe danger.
Yeah. I wonder, actually, when you tell your production team, we're headed off to Saudi Arabia and Africa in terms of location and scene and the scenes, what's the reaction that you get? Are they terribly excited, or are they daunted, and are they like, are you kidding me? Like what happens?
The reaction is, what's the blueprint for the fake Saudi Arabian room we're going to create on our stages in East New York and Brooklyn? And then what stock shots of Saudi Arabia are we going to get to put in front of the room that we're building in East New York? We don't leave home very much. So no. Even the Africa portion and the Saudi portion are shot on built sets in New York.
Yeah. I think it would be such an amazing challenge to sink your teeth into. Chris, congrats on a great show. It's the flagship for the upcoming MGM Plus, used to be Epix. Such a success, and you must be super proud. And we're going to bring you back shortly for our group chat.
Thank you. And the final thing to say about Forrest's performance is he's playing a lead here. He's not playing the priest in Black Panther. You know, he's dominating the show.
Yeah.
He's getting to show so many colors of his acting ability. He did a master class in acting the other day in a scene with Malcolm. And so I can't more strongly recommend his performance and how he handles being the solid lead of a show. And it's he's marvelous to
Yeah.
work with and watch.
Totally agree. He's amazing. We're gonna
Thank you
cut it
very
there.
much.
Thank you, Chris. All right, take a little break and we'll be back soon.